Now, who were the founding fathers of liberalism? The first person, if we look back in history, in the history of liberalism and the principles upon which it was founded, the first individual, the individual who can be considered as a founding father of the liberal philosophy, is the Italian Renaissance philosopher, statesman, and writer Niccolo Machiavelli, whose most famous work was The Prince, and that earned him a reputation as an atheist and an immoral cynic. In short, Machiavelli was the first one to introduce the ideology of centralization and the isolation of morality from politics. The separation between morals and rule and governing. There is to be no consideration of morals when it came to governing and rule, meaning that the ends justify the means. So do as you please and do not say that this is haram or that this is haram, or that this is immoral or wrong, or that this is true or false. Therefore, according to him, in order for there to be political success, then it is a must that morals be separated from politics. This was the first seed that would act as a framework for liberalism in its future stage. And in order to understand the different forms of liberalism, then we can categorize them into three main categories, all coming under the header liberalism. The first being political liberalism. The second, economic liberalism. And the third, the liberal ideology as a philosophy, or the ideology itself. And we are not able to completely separate between these three different forms of liberalism. However, in order to understand the origin of liberalism, we must separate them into those three categories. Now, after Machiavelli, we can trace back political liberalism to three main personalities. And they are Thomas Hobbes, John Locke, and Montesquieu. And it is important to note that when we say that they were the founders of political liberalism, that it does not mean that everything found within liberalism was founded by these three individuals. Rather, what we mean by them being the founders of liberalism is that they are considered the first to bring forth some of the main philosophies and principles that make up the philosophy of liberalism. So the first individual, Thomas Hobbes, was born in the year 1588 in a town 30 miles east of Bristol, UK, called Westport, and died in the year 1679. He was an English philosopher, scientist, and historian, best known for his political philosophy, especially as articulated in his masterpiece, according to them, Leviathan, in 1651. Hobbes viewed government primarily as a device for ensuring collective security. Political authority is justified by a hypothetical social contract among the many that vests in a sovereign person or entity the responsibility for the safety and well-being of all. In metaphysics, Hobbes defended materialism, the view that only material things are real. So we see here that Hobbes held the belief that only things we can see, touch, hear, smell, and taste are real, which means that belief in the unseen is something foreign and baseless according to him. And once again, this is why we see that this idea of government only addresses the dealings of people between one another and has absolutely no spiritual aspect or any relevance or connection to a supreme being of any kind. Another belief that was held by Hobbes was what he called, quote unquote, the natural right, meaning that every individual has the right to do as he pleases without any restriction. And he realized that if this was left unrestricted, that people would always be in constant chaos and fighting. Therefore, he introduced what he called the social contract, which in a nutshell was that a group of society must give up their natural rights to another group of society, which would be those governing the land, in order for people to live in peace. The second individual is John Locke. So after Thomas Hobbes came John Locke. John Locke was born in 1632 in Rington, Somerset, England, and died in Essex in the year 1704. Locke was an English philosopher whose works lie at the foundation of modern philosophical empiricism and political liberalism, and he was known throughout history as the father of liberalism. And what is meant by empiricism in philosophy is the view that all concepts originate in experience, that all concepts are about or applicable to things that can be experienced, or that all rationally acceptable beliefs or propositions are justifiable or knowable only through experience. Now what does that do? Once again, just like Hobbes, just like Machiavelli, that we cannot believe or hold opinions unless we can experience them. What does that mean? That is once again cutting off anything from the unseen. So a belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, according to them, cannot be experienced by the person himself, and therefore cannot be real or cannot be believable or accepted. John Locke, he was an inspirer of both the European Enlightenment and the Constitution of the United States. So the Constitution of the United States is based primarily or mostly on some of the philosophies of this individual, John Locke. And from John Locke's most famous works is his work entitled Two Treatises of Government. In it, he reiterates and emphasizes the matter of the natural right, similar to Thomas Hobbes, and also discusses the matter of freedoms. And from the most ironic of things regarding this John Locke, who discusses freedoms, rights, and is considered the father of liberalism, was that he was from the greatest of slave traders in the world during his time. He was considered the 6th greatest slave trader in the world in his time. So these are the people who have founded this evil methodology. An individual who called to and advocated for freedom and rights and liberalism was known as one of the greatest slave traders. What a contradiction. And in reality, liberalism is actually one of the doctrines or philosophies that are known to contradict itself the most. For example, aspects of democracy has some aspects of liberalism within it. However, if liberalism is giving the freedom, ultimate freedom to every individual, and basically every individual is judged based on whatever they believe to be correct, right or wrong, or true or false. In democracy, they leave it to the population, those who are being governed in the country, to decide how they are governed, basically, by way of voting. Now, if a specific bill is to be passed in America, for example, and 51% of the population is in favor of it, and 49% of the population is against it, then they go with the majority rule. That is democracy. However, where is the liberalism then for the 49%? That 49% had their freedoms and their rights taken away from them. And their natural right, or their right to be governed the way they wanted to be governed, was taken away from them. And so, as you see, anything that is from other than Allah will always contradict itself. Any man-made law will always crumble and will always fail. And there is no justice from all angles and in all aspects in man-made laws. That is something that is impossible for the human being to come up with. And that is why we were put on this earth and given the guide, the thing to follow in order to be prosperous in this life and in the hereafter. And that is the religion of Al-Islam. And so these three individuals that we mentioned, they are the people who have founded this evil methodology. Get to know them, brothers and sisters, so that you are not deceived by what the disbelievers glorify to you and beautify for you. The third individual, Montesquieu, was born in the year 1689 in Château-la-Brède near Bordeaux, France. He was a French political philosopher whose principal work, The Spirit of Laws, was a major contribution to political theory. From his beliefs were that the black race were of lesser status than all other races on earth. He would even legislate and justify that blacks can never be anything more than slaves. So much so that from his statements was, quote, "How can it be that a God could put a good spirit into a black person?" And when it comes to economic liberalism, we have an individual named Thomas Marcus, who is known as one of its founders as well. From his theories and beliefs was that there is an exponential increase in the number of people on earth that is increasing at a higher rate and a faster rate in comparison to the increase and availability of nutrition. Thus, there would come a time where the amount of nutrition available on earth would not suffice the number of people on earth. So what was his solution to this problem, to this imbalance between food and nutrition that's available on earth and the number of people on earth? He had many ideas and solutions, but one of them was to not be eager in saving those who are in areas of severe poverty or areas that have been hit with drought and